Welcome into yet another Dynasty rookie profile where we're doing a deep dive into some of the draft prospects in the 2024 draft. Today, we're looking at wide receiver Malik Washington out of Virginia. And if this is the first time watching one of these videos, we have three others out on the page. We have an Xavier Worthy, Xavier Legette, and Troy Franklin video. And we're just really trying to dive deep into the numbers a little bit, look at their profile, things we like, things we don't like, in order to better equip ourselves when it comes to our Dynasty rookie drafts. The first round, usually the first 7, 8, 9 picks, especially this year, are kind of determined. It's the second, the third, the fourth round where we try to find these gems, the Puka Nakuas, the Tank Dells. Are there things that we can look at to signal a good player, a player that's potentially going to be productive in the NFL and for fantasy football, of course? And, there's no one thing to point to. I wish there was a number we can all look at and just be like, oh, this is fantasy success. This means this player is going to be successful in the NFL. There just isn't, which honestly kind of makes football a lot of fun. Puka Nakuas, they can kind of come out of nowhere. And no matter how much research and preparation you do, you just can't prepare for that type of stuff. But we're trying to look at some pieces of the puzzle that maybe we can put together in order to find more Puka Nakuas and Tank Dells. Because if you hit on one of those in Dynasty football, a third round Dynasty rookie pick, man, it just helps your team so much. So today we're looking at Malik Washington, who, this is our first guy who's doesn't have, in my opinion, doesn't have the potential to go in the first round. I think Legette, Worthy, and Troy Franklin all have a chance to be in the first round. Malik Washington is probably a day 2 pick, maybe a day 3 pick. It's one of our more deeper dive in general of a player, which is good. This is the point of this series, is to not talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., who we all know is awesome. It's to talk about Malik Washington, a guy who, maybe not a lot of people know. So, again, he played at Virginia. A little bit of his profile. He's 5'8", 192. So, on the smaller side for sure. That's one negative, I would say. It's not a death note or anything. We've seen receivers be smaller, way less. They have more success in the NFL. Nowadays, especially. So 5'8", 192. He's kind of built for his size. He's built more like a running back almost. Obviously not quite that way, but anyways, you see his 2023 production: 110 catches, 1,426 yards, and 9 touchdowns. This guy was highly productive. His last year of college, his only year at Virginia. He played at Northwestern beforehand, didn't really do much his first 2 years in college at Northwestern. And then his next 2 years, 2021 and 2022, is when he started to produce. Now, if you just go look at his stat page, his numbers aren't popping off the page, but he did have a pretty decent dominator rating, which we will get into later. Again, I see him according to Mock Draft Database, he's a mid-4th round projection. I've seen him as high, I believe, as a 3rd round pick in mock draft. So we'll see. Maybe he'll go in day 2. That would be awesome if he did. Yards per route run, 3.15 his last year with Virginia. That is really good number. Really good number. Again, yards per route run is a really good metric to measure fantasy success, NFL success, whatever. You go look at the top 10 yards per route run. It's the CeeDee Lambs, the Amon-Ra St. Browns, the Justin Jeffersons of the world. So we ideally want to see this at or over 2.9 yards per route run. He was at 3.15. He smashed it. His ADOT was 8.1 his last year at Virginia, which was pretty, we want to see it a little bit higher. We want to see a little bit more of a down the field threat. Ideally, we want to see the ADOT around, I'd say, anywhere from like 10.5 to 13.5. We don't want to see it too high. We don't want to see it too low. This to me is a little bit low. It's not a death note. Again, there's nothing that's a death note really. His ADOT, it stayed pretty consistent, under 10 his 3 years of major production in college. So, that's just the player he is. He's probably projected as a slot guy, which again, we'll get more into. A 2.6% drop rate, I love to see. And that's on 138 targets. That's awesome. That is awesome, 2.6. And it stayed very consistent his 3 years of production 4.4, 1.5, and 2.6. Never had more than 5%. That is really, really good, especially if you're going to be a slot receiver. Yards after the catch, 6.4, solid number there. His contested catch percentage is almost 65%. Of his contested targets he caught. That is awesome to see. Again, we talked about it in other videos. We want to see that about 50% or higher. And of course, the more it goes past 50%, the better it is. 65 is really high. One of the better ones, probably in this whole draft class, I would guess. Just kind of quickly looking through because I did write down these numbers. Yeah, it looks like it might be the highest actually in the draft class is contested catch percentage. And then the last number here, you see the CTT percentage. This is something I am looking at more and more. This is the amount of targets that were contested. And to me, what this shows a lot of times, especially over the span of a college career, is how often do you get open on your routes? Are you getting open on your routes, or do you have problems creating separation? So if this number's 20% or higher, it's starting to become a little bit of a red flag. Got to go back and look and see why. If it's under 15%, I think that's really, really awesome. That means you're getting open a lot. And a lot of a receiver getting open is your route running and your ability to create separation, find the holes in zones, and sometimes speed as well. 19%, it's not great. It's not terrible. It's just kind of, it is what it is. So, he is more of a over the middle type of player, slot player as well. As you see, he played 86% of his snaps in the slot. So you're generally going to get a little bit more of a contested target, but also, his ADOT was pretty low, which means he did get a lot of like bubble screens and little gadget plays that are designed to get the ball in their hands. And those are almost impossible to be considered targeted because they're behind the line of contested because they're behind the line of scrimmage. So, I'd like to see this a little lower, but again, when you watch him play, he does create a lot of space in a lot of his routes. So again, he seems to be projected as a slot player, played 86% of his snaps last year in the slot. So, generally college players, even if they become slot players in the NFL, generally the ones being drafted are, they do play a lot out wide because normally you're one of the two best receivers in your team. Depends on the type of offense you run. If Virginia just plays a lot of 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets and not a lot of 2 wide receiver sets, then Malik Washington's always going to be in the slot. So one other position I put, the inline stat, this is lining up as a tight end off the line of scrimmage, normally 39, and that's 5%. And the reason why I wrote this down, if you watch the NFL these days, especially a team like Miami, or the Rams or San Francisco, super creative offenses. If you look at the way they run their offenses, a lot of times they're lining up wide receivers now. Tyreek Hill is lining up as like a tight end a lot. So it kind of fits the mold of today's NFL a little bit, that versatility of running a route. It may not sound like amazing, but it's different. It's different when you line up as a tight end off the line of scrimmage and you're running a route from there. That's very different than running a route from the slot or out wide. So I like to see that versatility there. So getting into some of the numbers that are important to highlight. Career dominator. Once again, if this is the first time you're watching these videos, the dominator is the percentage of the team's receiving offense, yards, and touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. Over the course of his career, basically 3 years of college career, 2 at Northwestern, and then last year at Virginia, he had 29% of the team's receiving production. That's awesome to see. If you go back, and again, I mentioned this in all these videos, but I went back and looked at every single fantasy relevant receiver since the year 2010. And again, to be a fantasy relevant receiver, a very low bar, you have to have 2 seasons as a top 36 receiver or more, of course, higher or more seasons. So a very low bar. There was 78 receivers since 2010 that have done that. I believe all but like 12 to 15 of them had a career college dominator of 25% or higher. So we love to see it over 25%. 20% is almost a must, and then anything under 20% is a little bit of a red flag, which we talked about with Leggett. So 29% is awesome. His single season career high is 47%, which is ridiculous. He was 47% of Virginia's receiving offense last year. Yards and touchdowns went to Malik Washington, which is just absolutely insane. But His breakout age of 20 years old. Now, what breakout age is the first the year how old you were the first year in which you put up 20% or more of the team's receiving offense. So you had a dominator in a single season of 20% or more. He was 20 years old when he did it. Again, didn't really do much his first 2 years at college. 20 years old is fine. And breakout age is kind of important. Again, go back and look at all the fantasy relevant receivers, 78 of them. Once again, there's 8 of them, only 8 that have had a breakout age in college above the age of 20. Guys, there's a couple notable ones like Terry McLaurin and Jalen Waddle. But generally, and then the fantasy relevant receivers, and fantasy relevant a lot of times translates to the NFL in terms of yards and touchdowns and production like that. All those guys who are fantasy relevant since 2010 are breaking out in college at 18, 19, 20 years old. So we love to see the breakout age of 20 or lower. Now, I will say, I think COVID kind of messed this up just a little bit. COVID was obviously a weird year. We're still getting these guys who were, in college during their COVID year. We're still going to get that for this year and probably next year, maybe. Yeah. It made things, maybe gave players less of an opportunity. Obviously there's some divisions, some conferences that only played like 4 or 5 games. So, that does skew it a little bit. And then his highest PFF grade was 92.4, which is one of the highest in this draft class. So whatever you think about PFF, that's fine. So overall, there's again some really nice things to look at here. His career dominator, his breakout age is great, and Malik Washington, in terms of the film and what I've seen on the film, is just obviously really good route runner, tough over the catch, can find the soft spots and zones, really, really reliable hands, obviously, does not drop any balls in traffic, doesn't matter. The guy contested catches, the guy is money, and that's so important in the slot because the slot, you have to make those over the field catches, middle of the field catches, a lot more tighter spaces, tighter windows. So if you're dropping the ball, you're just not going to make it. You can afford to play on the outside and maybe drop the ball a little bit more. You can't be dropping the ball over the slot, over the middle of the field and things like that. Like it's too dangerous, and it's too quarterbacks need that reliability. So he's super agile and elusive with the ball in his hands. Like so many times, if you go back and watch some of his cut ups, and you just see him turn a 2-yard pass into a 15-yard play, like short gains into big yardages. Really good route runner, in my opinion. He does get that separation from defenders. It feels like more than this 19% would kind of imply. It feels like he was every time he catches it. Not every time, but a lot of times when he catches the ball, he's no one around him for 3, 4, or 5 yards. So love to see that. Love to see that route running skills. And then, of course, there's weaknesses. Like I said, the height is always going to be a weakness. There's a reason why receivers are generally 6 foot and taller. Now, does that mean you can't make it? No. Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who I think is 6 foot. But, there's plenty of receivers who have made it under 6 feet. It's just, in general, you like to see them a little bit bigger. He's not super fast. Like, he has enough speed to be successful in the NFL for sure. I think he's projected to run like a low 4.4 or a high 4.5. So, that's good enough speed, especially if you're going to be a slot player. But he's not going to really take the top off the defense and things like that. So obviously his blocking skills he's going to need to clean that up, his blocking in the run game. And I know, again, that doesn't translate necessarily to fantasy points, but it translates to opportunity on the field. So needs to work on that just a little bit in order to be just on the field more. So what I like about guys like Malik Washington, there's a couple other guys in this draft class that are going to be drafted probably day 3 or late day 2 picks. One of the things I really like about them is that they're going to get on the field most likely. Like a team's going to draft them and say, all right, this is going to be our slot receiver most likely. And he's going to get on the field. And because they're going to get that opportunity, because they can play in the slot, they're going to have the opportunity to show, hey, I'm good. I'm more than that. I'm more than just a slot receiver. I always think of like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I feel like he really flew under the radar for most people. What was he, a 3rd, 4th round draft pick? Not a lot of people were talking about obviously how good he has become in the NFL. But I think one of the reasons why we've seen him progressed so much, especially so early on, it's because he was able to get on the field as like a slot guy at the very least. All right, you can play in the slot, you make those tough in traffic over the field catches, and then you started to realize, holy crap, this guy's really good. Maybe we should use him more rather than just a slot guy. So do I think that's going to happen with Malik Washington? No. But again, we're talking about potential 4th round draft pick. We're talking about in dynasty rookie drafts, maybe a 3rd round pick, late 2nd, 3rd round pick. And those guys are kind of dart throws in general. I know Tank Dells and Puka Nakuas makes people think, oh, I can find that guy. Those are kind of exceptions to the rule. Generally, you go back and look at your 3rd round rookie draft picks, they don't really pan out, 4th round especially. So, take a chance on a guy like this that is at least going to get on the field. He could have some production and value in like PPR leagues. And then what if he's just better? What if he's just better than what we think, right? He gets on the field because of his ability to play in the slot. And then it's like, oh, holy crap, this guy's actually a lot better than we think. So am concerned about if he's ever going to be able to to play on the outside at that size at 5'8", but especially lacking the speed. But he could just be, if he gets to the right team with a high passing volume, a slot guy, think of like Cole Beasley with the Buffalo Bills, what was it, 2020 or something like that. And he had like a top 24 fantasy wide receiver season. So Malik Washington, pay attention. He did go to the Shrine game as well, which is like the all-star game for college football kind of. That and the Senior Bowl are always good to watch. And he impressed at the Shrine game. He really, really impressed. So he definitely increased his draft stock. So, we love to see that. We love to see players that go to the Senior Bowl, to the Shrine Bowl, and dominate, right? Those are the guys, because you're playing against the best of the best. So there you have it, guys. That is Malik Washington. Pay attention to him as we progress in this draft season. I didn't even mention, it's February 18th. So we're still months away from the draft, still a little over a week and a half, or about 2 weeks away from the combine. So still a lot can change. As always, guys, like and subscribe. We're going to be putting more of these videos out, mostly running backs and receivers, a couple tight ends, probably not so much a quarterback. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time.